What up, Raffleators? Welcome back to my channel. We are on Mandela Avenue. This is the back road, Mandela Avenue, and we're looking at the reserve ground, the reserve land between Mandela Avenue and Aubrey Barker Road. So Aubrey Barker Road is on the south side of Mandela Avenue, and that reserve land is actually meant to be reserved for utilities, you know, like putting a train line in. I've talked at length in the past about train transportation, a metro for Georgetown, and this reserve land should have been kept preserved for such a metro that would run along the riverbank and then turn east at Mandela Avenue. This is like Thirst Park, at the western end of this road is Thirst Park. So then you would have had a train running along besides Mandela Avenue on that reserve. But instead what we have here is some communications equipment on a communication tower. I suppose this is GT&T's communication tower, cell tower. And then further up, there are these new buildings that were constructed. Actually, I have some new information on these buildings. Turns out that these buildings are now, well, somebody pointed out in earlier videos, these buildings are actually part of Bank's DIH group. In other words, they are built by the CEO of Bank's DIH. One of them, the first building, we now know this first building is a residential building. For a long time, I speculated that it might be another bank, and the colors suggested it might be Scotiabank, but it's actually the same owner as Citizen Bank, and the next building is Citizens Bank. The third building is actually owned by the CEO of Car Care, and talk about that when we get there. Here, this reserve that should have been kept open for expansion of transportation, perhaps building a metro, you know, a light rail system, was over the years, and this is by both governments now, has been converted into residential use and commercial use. And that's unfortunate, because in city planning, if there was planning, and in fact there seems to have been planning from the beginning since the 1950s and the 1960s that led to the preservation of this reserve land. If the consistency of planning had been maintained, this land would have been kept open so that now you could have a light rail system which would relieve traffic. Because if you can use a railroad instead of driving around the city, a lot more people would use the rail than the road, and the city wouldn't be as congested. It's just like New York City, right? Anyway, so this building is now been confirmed to be a residential building owned by Bank's DIH, the CEO of Bank's DIH, and the next building is also owned by the CEO of Bank's DIH. This is Citizens Bank, which is a subsidiary of Bank's DIH, right? Just like the other local bank here, GBTI is a subsidiary of the Bihari Group, which started out as a food company packaging things like curry powder and condiments, all the condiments and chow mein, noodles and so on. They actually expanded their group to include, to acquire GBGI, and Banks DIH built Citizens Bank. And the third bank here is in Georgetown, that is in Guyana, is Demerara Bank, which is, I think, supported by DDL. Those of you who know, give me the facts on that. So Citizens Bank here on the reserve. This bank, I said, has been open. In the background there's another building going up. I think that's a residential building. It's between a couple of homes there. Right, this is a residential building being built on Aubrey Barker Road. But this is now a residential building on the reserve, owned by Demerara, by CEO of Citizens Bank, which is CEO of Banks DIH, as a Citizens Bank. This building, however, is not the same. At least not the same owners. I've been saying for years that this, or for a number of months, that this seems to be another Banks DIH building. It turns out that no, I've actually met the owner of this building now, and we have new information. This building is actually owned by Carcare. So the CEO of Carcare owns this building, and it is a residential building. It's going to be multiple units of residences. But it's also built on the reserve. So what happens next is that if you want to build a metro system, you're going to have to build it in the center, that is the median of this Mandela Avenue road. In other words, you're going to have to build an elevated line. You have to put it up in the air, maybe 30 feet. So it's going to be like the L train in Brooklyn. It's going to be an elevated line, and that is if you decide to build a metro in Georgetown. A lot of these roads, these metro lines, are going to have to be elevated because the reserve is now occupied by buildings. But yeah, this we now know is a residential building owned by the CEO of Carcare, and this median is not wide enough to put trains onto the center, but you're gonna have to elevate the train line a few feet, maybe 20 to 30 feet above the road, so that you can have a metro. And that's the problem with city planning. If you don't plan for the city before you build, you end up getting or distorted development. In other words, to be able to achieve the same quality of transportation systems you have in developed cities around the world, you're going to have to distort the transportation network. It's going to have to be elevated over the roads instead of being built on land specifically reserved for the light rail network that should be built. Here we are at the intersection with Heroes Highway. This is the South Ruimveldt roundabout. Right ahead, straight ahead, that's the roundabout for South Ruimveldt. That's the north Ruimveldt Secondary School, multilateral school in the distance. It's a Ramadan village, still being advertised there. But yes, here is Heroes Highway. We said in a previous video, these power lines are bringing power from the power ship, right? So these power lines go all the way to the river. They've been built on these huge aluminum towers. And they actually turn further west here, running along these power lines, running along, what is it? Well, where do they go from here? See the power lines turn north and east. They probably go to a substation that allows you to, in this neck of the woods, step down, transform the power to 220 volts or the local 110 volts. But this is what's happening here, guys. This is the South Ruimveldt roundabout on a Saturday morning. This is Mandela. The other side of Mandela Avenue is Aubrey Barker Road, right? Aubrey Barker Road, looking west. And as you can see, those are the new buildings on Aubrey Barker Road, like we said, owned by Banks DIH, CEO of Banks DIH, and this one ahead in front of us, owned by the CEO of Car Care. And that's Mandela, that's Aubrey Barker Road looking east into South Ruimveldt Gardens. Aubrey Barker Road looking east. But we're heading down south. That's south towards South on. This is Heroes Highway. South towards the intersection with was it the interchange intersection at a roundabout at Eccles interchange. So the development that we can or we are getting is totally haphazard because the city planning, urban planning that should have been preserved from earlier generations, you know, the land that was reserved for building things like roads and utilities and so on. Those reserves were turned over to private developers, and now we're left with reserved land occupied by private owners and nowhere to put train service or dedicated train stations, bus terminuses, and so on. There's no land, no more reserved land to put those items, and that's going to impact the development that we get in future. However, hopefully the next generation of Guyanese will come back and reverse some of the haphazardness. Like I said in the previous video, it's a very loose society at this point. These are the power lines. It's a very loose society. There's no discipline in the way we choose to develop, and that's going to affect the quality of what we create. But this is Heroes Highway. This is Heroes Highway. We're walking south, and Heroes Highway actually runs between South Ruimveldt Gardens. Remember, this was actually reserved land, right? So thankfully no one got to this land before the highway was planned, and now we're able to have a highway because the land that was reserved for this highway was preserved. And if you go all the way down through south, you will see reserves. I think I've counted at least 2 wide swaths of land that were reserved. And the kind of development, the kind of planning that goes into development, quality of development that follows, depends on us keeping those reserves open and using them for what they were intended. But like I said, in a loose society, nobody follows the rules. Everybody does their own thing. And we have such a loose society that it shows in the development. Anyway, here we are back at Houston. And we can take a look at the progress being made at the 4 Points. So that's the 4 Points Hotel. It seems as if 4 Points is now nearing completion. So this is 4 Points Hotel here at Houston. You can see they're now building out their balconies. Remember, it's Saturday morning here in Georgetown, Guyana. So these guys are working on the weekend. Right, these are the builders, construction workers here at 4 Points Hotel. 4 Points Hotel. Now they seem to be working on the exterior walls. They were working on the interior walls for quite some time, and they seem to have completed that. So this hotel is much nearer completion today than it was several months ago. Again, like I said, this is the power line. These power lines go all the way to the river, which we saw in the previous video. These power lines go to the power ship, which is sitting on the bank of the Demerara River. And we're about, let's say, about 3 miles away from the river at this point, or maybe 2.5, about 2.5 miles away from the river at this point. And if you go straight along this road, that is, if you go straight along this road, which is Caneview Avenue, or if you walk on the this median, right, this reserve where you have cows grazing, you'll actually get to Meadowbank. So we're actually standing at this point east of Meadowbank, and if you walked on this reserve, on which the these power lines are built, you'll get to Meadowbank and the power ship. So that's where we are in relation to the bank of the Demerara River. So we enter Houston. Yes, as we enter Houston, you can see some progress being made on this. Of course, is the 4 Points Hotel by Sheraton. This is a Sheraton branded property. 4 Points Hotel. You can see what appears to be a deck being built. And further along, of course, you can see that building is now being converted into a government building, which used to be, I think, Sheriff Mall or Sheriff Hospital, but now it's going to be used by the government of Guyana. And next door, it's the Sheriff International Mall being built. It says coming soon. And I guess they're making some progress too on putting in the floors. On the other side, of course, a lot of this reserve land, this land is going to be converted into commercial property soon. And I guess in a few months you won't be able to recognize it. Which is why I come back here regularly to see the progress being made, because every time you get back to this neck of the woods, it has been transformed by new construction. So that is some kind of warehouse building in construction. This side, Sheriff Mall, but of course next door and almost hidden behind Sheriff Mall, that's the 4 Points by Sheraton. That's the new 4 Points by Sheraton, beginning to take shape. You can see what its final form will look like. Several decks of balcony. And of course, behind the Sheriff Mall, the building is being completed. And of course, here on the south side, that is the building behind. That's the Guyana Water Inc. building behind. This apparently is going to become the new headquarters of the Guyana Housing and Water Authority. So currently, these two buildings combined are going to be Housing and Water, Ministry of Housing and Water, Ministry of Housing in front, and the Water Authority in the back. Alright, that's the Water Authority building in the back, both of which are being constructed by Sheriff's Construction arm of the Sheriff Group. So this is what is happening in this neck of the woods. As you can see, the progress on the Four Points. Progress on the 4 Points Hotel is significant because they've added windows to the east end of the building. That small L-shaped section now has its windows installed. And the rest of the building is catching up very rapidly. So you can see between and behind Sheriff Hall, the rest of the building is catching up. It will be completed soon. That's what's happening, guys. That's what's happening in this neck of the woods. If you want to see more content like this, click like and subscribe. This is a rapidly changing section. This is Saturday morning and the traffic here is so busy that you have to acknowledge the change, the transformation that's happening here in this neck of the woods in Guyana. Because even 6 months ago, there was not this much traffic on Heroes Highway. So there's more land being prepared here between Heroes Highway and David Rose Street. See that? That new warehouse building, the frame is almost completed. It's going to be massive apparently when it's finished. It's based on the look of it. And on the other side, another warehouse building. See, that warehouse building is also near completion. It's a massive warehouse building on the east side there of Heroes Highway. Massive warehouse building. Don't know who owns that one yet. But we will soon find out. Back where we've come from. That's a new 4 Points Hotel behind the frame of Sheriff Mall. And in front of us, New Guyana Water Authority Inc. The New Guyana Housing Authority Inc. And behind it, the Water Authority. That's what's happening, guys. That's what's happening in this neck of the woods. If you want to see more content like this, click like and subscribe. Share this video with friends and family around the world. Let people see what's happening in the fastest growing country in the world, Guyana. And this is Houston Village, Guyana. Or actually Houston, Guyana. Later!